Sure. Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Appreciate you all coming to this special meeting of Finance. We have a couple of items on the agenda. We do have an executive session, but I'm going to save that until after. Don Boyagi, he's going to be making a presentation regarding the county's potential for entering into opioid litigation. So Don is hailing from Saratoga. He has a private firm and he's working with another one out of Albany. So at this point I would like to have Don, if you don't mind coming to the table, Don. And
Sure.
is he hooked up to the screen?
We can move the podium.
It's just fine. I'll keep my voice up. Looks like he's got it. Thanks for having me. As the chairman said, I'm a Saratoga County attorney. Our office is in Albany, and we're working with a law firm that is really a national law firm based out of the Midwest in New York City called Simmons Hanley Conroy regarding what's been deemed the opioid crisis. And I'm here really to just tell you a little bit about what has happened in the past, to give you a little information to see if the county has any interest in joining in litigation that has already been filed in New York State and is currently pending right now. There's a consolidated action that is pending in Suffolk County, in which there are at least 11 counties that have participated. That litigation is currently stayed, what we call stayed, which means it's on hold, trying to see what other counties want to participate in. That's where it currently stands. So I'm sure everyone's heard about what has been deemed the opioid crisis, been deemed a national emergency. It's a huge problem. Opioids didn't just come about in the last 10 years, but yet we have this crisis. And just to put a little, some specific and objective numbers on it, the suggestion is that there's about $80 billion each and every year that is spent, and much of it by municipalities like counties, like Warren County, fighting the costs associated with this problem. And it has to do everything from your social services that you provide your residents, to substance abuse, treatment and care, to police care. All of these costs are going to be borne by the counties and the cities and the towns and the state. And the purpose of this litigation is really to try to make those folks who are really responsible for this problem accountable for some of those costs, so it's not all borne by the taxpayers. The litigation that has been commenced is on behalf of municipalities, is really kind of the second wave of litigation that has occurred in regard to this problem. This first national litigation that was started on the opioid crisis was started by the firm that I'm working with, Simmons Hanley Conroy. That dated back to 2003. So they've been involved in this before anybody else, longer than anybody else, and in a bigger way than anybody else since 2003. And what they did was they brought a claim on behalf of individuals, 5,000 individuals. They sued on behalf of them, saying that they were addicted, they suffered harm because of the aggressive marketing of opioids to doctors who then prescribed them. That case was originally thought by the industry and by a lot of lawyers to be not a winnable case. But they pursued it for several years, and they ultimately were successful in settling that case for over $75 million on behalf of 5,000 people. What was really important about that was that, when we get involved in litigation, you have this power of subpoena, and you can get documents, and you can find out what the underlying facts are about the company's activities and conduct. And they did that as part of the litigation. They found certain information that they provided to the Department of Justice and to law enforcement officials, and lo and behold, it turned out that this didn't just happen by accident or coincidence or because dumb people wanted to take opioids and abuse opioids, or the doctors were just giving these things out willy-nilly. but it was because of a concerted, aggressive, and fraudulent marketing scheme that was perpetrated by the executives of these companies. And to the extent that, and I don't think a lot of people know this, but to the extent that 3 executives from the biggest manufacturers pled guilty to felonies for fraudulent marketing. Okay, the problem is the cat's out of the bag. The problem started and it's snowballed, leading us up to kind of where we are today. And so the litigation really is designed to take those key manufacturers who were involved with OxyContin, Percocet, fentanyl, but not just the individuals, because it doesn't just happen by the companies. The companies had to really do something. What was the aggressive marketing, misleading marketing that they engaged in? Well, essentially, the opioids are generally used, and they're properly used for short-term acute pain management, right? You're not supposed to take it if you got a nagging back that's been aching you for years to control your pain. If you got a very serious injury and you need short-term, really effective pain medication, these drugs are good for that. But you can imagine the market for that type of use is pretty limited, right? Not everybody has a traumatic acute pain situation, but there are a lot of people, especially as we get an aging population, the people who have chronic aches and pains. They start marketing it to say, well, we're not really in agreement that these things are addictive for long-term use if it's managed correctly. And so then they started marketing it, and the way they did that was by they hire these very, very prominent physicians to go out, when they give lectures before other doctors, send them out on the lecture circuit and say, you really ought to consider using these things for more long-term pain, because they're good for long-term pain. So the problem with that is, once you use an opioid for a longer period of time, its effectiveness becomes less and less. So the longer you use it, the less effective it is, the more you have to take, which is where people get addicted, but you start selling a lot more. And these folks make about $8 billion annually, selling opioids in general, and $3 or $4 billion, on some of the ones that are really at the heart of the addiction problem. So these drugs became plentiful, available. Kids got them from their parents' medicine cabinets, or they got them themselves. Let me say just a little point about that. In addition to the marketing of saying, we're going to use it for more long-term care, they really kind of pushed it into different areas. So you'd go to your dentist. I don't know, when I was a kid, I never remember a dentist offering you an opioid for any dental issues. Well, they do that all the time. They're doing that regularly. So they pushed it into dentistry. Then they started to, promote it for sports medicine. So you got kids in high school, college athletics being, encouraged to use opioids to manage pain, and it's a huge, huge problem. The the National Institutes of Health, have all basically suggested. The National Institute of Health has identified the drug companies' aggressive marketing as the major contributor to the opioid abuse problem. And there are approximately, the numbers are really staggering. 100 people dying, every day from 10,000 opioid deaths, or 18 to 19,000 opioid deaths annually relating to prescription pain, compared to 10,000 from heroin. So it's an enormous problem. It's an enormous problem with regard to the financial aspects of this as well, because of that $78 billion annual problem, there's approximately $40 billion in lost productivity, about $26 billion in health insurance, about $7.6 billion to the criminal justice system, and a little under $3 billion annually for substance abuse treatment. So the money is going to get spent. The question really is, should it all get spent by the taxpayers, or should the folks who make a lot of money marketing this participate in that? And that's what the litigation is about, to make those who are, these things are determined by courts. You know, if there's no case there, the drug companies can say, you know, to the courts, and these cases are consolidated in New York State. Because the lawsuit involves litigation on behalf of municipal governments, it's not in federal court, it's in state court, and as I said, they're consolidated in Suffolk. The way the law firm Simmons Hanley Conroy is handling these, you know, is like a lot of litigation where there's a lot of risk. They're doing it on a contingency fee basis, meaning that if they're not successful in getting money for their municipal clients, there'll be no legal fee. But on top of that, and then very importantly, on top of that is the fact that if there are any expenses that are borne, and there are going to be a lot of expenses, not in terms of lawyers' time, but expenses for experts and you know, significant amount of out-of-pocket costs. They are going to incur all of those. So at the end of the day, in the event that the cases are dismissed, and the courts say that, you know, there's not a legal case against the manufacturers for this, there's no cost to the municipal clients at all. In other words, they won't come back and say there's money owed for legal fees, and by the way, there's money owed for expenses. So there's no financial exposure to the municipalities in terms of any out-of-pocket dollars. They're obviously, these things just don't prove themselves, so obviously there is some need, and this is really kind of where our firm comes in, being at the local level. There's a need to obviously gather the data, gather the costs locally, and that obviously would take some time from your internal personnel to you know, to try to talk to your law enforcement, your social services officials, all of the various components of county government to find out what costs you have incurred, and that would take some time. But from our standpoint, you know, it makes, we think it makes a lot of sense because there's not a lot of financial risk. There is a meritorious claim here, and if we're wrong, there's no real financial downside to the municipalities, but at least want to keep their options open in this regard. You know, we working with the Association of Counties, Mr. Steve Aquario, who I've known Steve for over 20 years, being in Albany. They are very much behind this litigation. I don't think they were, you know, initially, kind of like the tobacco litigation, right? A lot of people poo-pooed it and said, this is not, you know, how you assume the tobacco companies, people smoke because they want to smoke, it's their choice. But as it turns out, there was a little more to the story than that, and there was some real financial benefit. Obviously, and you know, as a lawyer, I tell you, I'm a personal injury lawyer, that's what we do. And people think it's about money, and listen, people do make money handling these cases, but it's about prevention. And I can tell you, you know, there are so many things that we do that ultimately make changes. This particular litigation, even where it is now, has changed the way doctors are prescribing opioids. So it's already having a positive effect, because the practice in terms of, and I think any of you go to your doctor. I bet you if you go to your doctor today, they're going to be a lot less likely to say, take an opioid, you know, here's a script. They might give you 1 or 2 pills, but I think it's changed the mindset because they realize what a really serious problem this is. So I'd like to answer any questions that anyone has, if I could.
Supervisor Beatty?
Yeah, thanks for coming, first of all. I did have a few questions. How much, obviously, let's say Warren County decides to participate. Our departments figure out how much money we have spent already with this problem. Then they go back to you, and you say, you add that to the suit, I assume, of the cost that we have incurred, and then you ask for 2 or 3 times, whatever, you know, the manufacturers for damages. Is that somewhat the process?
Well, yes, in essence, you know, a separate action would be filed. These are not, all these cases have been joined together, but each county's action would stand on its own.
Okay.
So we would file a separate complaint, and the complaint on behalf of Warren County would stay what the demographics are of Warren County, population, the nature of the expenditures, and then like any other case, you'd have to prove the case. I can tell you from a practical standpoint, in these types of cases, once they withstand the test from the courts that it's a meritorious claim, you know, it becomes a real practical issue for everybody concerned in this litigation. You know, do we want to go have separate trials on behalf of each of these counties, or would they try to, you know, engage in some sort of global resolution of the claim? Oftentimes, and you might have heard, you know, the term of class actions or group actions, and we've seen them, you know, you read about them all the time involving you know, pharmaceutical devices or other drugs. Sometimes what they do is they have what they call bellwether cases. In other words, they'll take one or two cases, carve them out, have a trial on them, and then everyone lives by the facts that are found. So, for example, if one of the counties brought a case and if it got to that stage and didn't go to trial, they went to trial on it, and a jury found that there was fraudulent advertising and fraudulent marketing practices. Well, that same finding would apply to all the counties, right? Every county wouldn't then have to go in and reprove that fact. So it provides a little bit of efficiency and economy of scale in terms of trying to prove a very complicated case like that. And that's how it works in most multi-party class action type litigation.
So we would be standing on our own, okay, based on our claims and so forth. But obviously, they would if they lost in other counties, then they would probably settle with us based on our amount and so forth. Now you said our cost would be minimal, other than obviously getting all the data provided that you would need to provide you to proceed. And you'd work on a contingency. Usually a contingency is either 25% or a third or whatever of the total settlement. Is that correct?
This would be 25%.
25%. Okay, that was one of my questions.
Yes.
And, okay, thank you. What would be, you know, just looking at it from a peripheral standpoint, it looks like a great situation for us to go after these people, okay, these manufacturers. They've done it wrong by falsely marketing. What if we don't participate, but decide we don't participate, particularly with your firm or whatever? Would we still have other options to pursue it as a county separately? I mean, would we lose standing because of the global possible?
No, I don't think you'd lose standing. Obviously, that's actually a little bit of a complicated question. You wouldn't necessarily lose standing. And there are a number of legal implications having to do with what we call statutes of limitations, time frames. You know, when you have a legal right to bring a claim, the law usually provides a time frame within which you must assert that claim. And so you have rolling damages as a county, in the sense that, you know, you're incurring money every year. So really every year you've got new claims that are being incurred, new damages that are being incurred. So no, I don't think you would lose your standing. It's not like a class action in the sense that sometimes, I don't get too complicated, but there are different types of class actions. Our firm has probably done, even here in the Capital Region, Albany, we've probably done more class actions than any other law firm, I think, in upstate New York. So I'm familiar with the procedural aspects of it, insofar as sometimes they have what they call opt-in class actions and opt-out class actions, where if you don't want to be involved in it, you have to say, I don't want to be involved. Then there are some where if you don't say anything, you are involved. And on those, once the class action is decided, you're bound by it unless you've opted out. This isn't a class action. These are individual lawsuits. So you wouldn't, I think you would have your rights would be preserved. That's a long-winded way of saying, I think your rights would be preserved if you decided to do nothing. I think from a practical standpoint, that would not be a good idea in terms of getting a result.
Because if we connected with your group, obviously, you'd have that track record. You may get a global settlement or whatever. Obviously, so there's a lot more, correct me if I'm wrong, benefits of doing it where other counties are doing it than trying to go on our own.
Strength in numbers. So
that's right.
So I've seen this happen in many other types of lawsuits. So for example, and they call them straggler cases. It's not really applicable to this, but, for example, there'll be a global resolution of a claim. I'm trying to use examples, and you might have remembered the Vioxx litigation. There was litigation involving Vioxx, where it was clearly showed statistical linkage with, heart attack. Well, they settled those cases as a class action. We weren't involved in that litigation. We're not familiar with it. And then people wanted to do it later. They could bring a claim, but they were on their own. And as a practical matter, that was very difficult. So would get pennies on the dollar compared to the people that were involved, sitting at the table with the strength of a group behind them. Yes, sir.
I've gotten emails from Bill Neckes, which I've shared with Kevin and Ron. He is working for a Napoli firm, same topic, same issue.
Yep.
Making presentations to Washington County, Saratoga County, and wants to make a presentation to this county as well.
Yes.
Is this a unified effort, or is it a competitive effort?
Oh, you know what? I would say that little of both, and I'll tell you why. The Napoli firm is. I know Bill Neckes for a long time. I think we represented the county back in the days. Well, I think on the burn plant litigation, our firm represented the county and other types of cases. I know Bill. I didn't know Bill was working on this. The Napoli firm kind of came on after the fact. They're a law firm based out of New York City. Their first big county was Nassau County, I think, where they had a big connection with. And they certainly came on much later in the development of this litigation than this firm. The Simmons Hanley Conroy is I think, they're both very big law firms. I think you'd have to do your own due diligence, but to answer your question, it's the same litigation. They have some counties that are consolidated in that Suffolk County litigation, and they would probably be working toward the same end. So their complaint's a little different.
It's a separate effort, though?
I wouldn't say it's a separate complaint, but they've been consolidated. So the courts, you can imagine, if you're judges, right, and we have there's a four-judge panel, when you have very complicated litigation like this, that decides how are we going to get cases from all over the state, how are we going to organize these, right? So they decided we'll put them in Suffolk. And, are we going to let everybody go off willy-nilly? No, we're not going to do that, because we couldn't operate, we couldn't operate the litigation efficiently. So they set specific rules. So the Napoli firm's complaint and the counties that they have, and Simmons Hanley Conroy complaint and the counties that they have, will be joined, and the court will set, what they call a discovery schedule, and the cases will go on, kind of together, and they're really fighting for the same thing. So it's unity in that sense. It's competing in the sense that obviously we think that the firm I'm working with is more well equipped to be at the bargaining table with these pharmaceutical defendants, because they've already showed these pharmaceutical defendants, the very same defendants, that they've got their number. If that answers your question. Maybe not.
Kind of. Yeah, well, I think you're competing for the same thing.
That's right. But I'll call Bill after this and find out what he's doing. Now that I know that.
He's presenting tomorrow, isn't he, John?
No, he wants to make a presentation.
Hey, tell him I said hello.
I guess Supervisor Strau, I was a little bit in the dark on this one. Is he looking to come to the county to make a presentation? Because I didn't hear anything about that.
Yeah, I did send a couple of emails to Ron and Kevin. I didn't hear anything back.
Okay.
Yeah.
On that note, Mr. Boyajian, is there a time frame that we need to enter into? I'm assuming you're going to be looking for a resolution from this committee to use your firm to pursue this litigation. Is there a time frame that we need to hop on, so to speak,
I wouldn't say that it's an imminent time frame. Obviously, we think that the sooner you get to the table, the better. But it's certainly something that I would encourage it be certainly done before the end of the year.
Well, I guess my question is maybe for Supervisor Strauss, seeing that you maybe have been in discussion with this gentleman, the end result is going to be the same. We're looking for some sort of a lawsuit, but I'm assuming the only difference is going to be the percentage of money that they are going to charge the county, or not charge the county, but...
Let me just address that, because I do know there's probably a little bit of a difference between the two firms. I think one of the things, and I'm not sure whether the Napoli firm is offering to absorb all of the expenses or not. I know that when they got on this, and again, they came in after the fact, they saw what Simmons Hanley did, and they came in and made alternate proposals. And then one of the things that they said to counties was, we're going to do this for a lower percentage if we get the case resolved sooner. So they said, we'll do this for 10% if we write a letter and if the pharmaceutical companies say, we give up, we'll pay. We'll do it for 10%. That's not going to happen. So that's kind of that is probably not, from a practical standpoint, a meaningful reduction.
False marketing?
I didn't say that.
I'm sorry, I know you didn't.
Supervisor Sieber, did you have a question?
I did, thank you. I was recently appointed to the Tobacco Settlement Board against my wishes. And I have learned that there's limitations on how that can be spent and, what it needs to go towards. Are there restrictions in terms of once this lawsuit goes through, if there are dollars recovered, that it needs to be spent raising awareness about addiction or treatment or, things like that?
I'm sure that there will be at some point, and that would be something that would get managed by the court, probably through some sort of negotiation, if it got to that point, some sort of negotiation between the pharmaceutical companies and the plaintiffs' counsel and the plaintiffs. So it's kind of premature, but my assumption would be that some of those same sort of restrictive covenants would be in there.
Supervisor McDevitt, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Just two quick questions. Specifically, who are the drug companies that are in litigation?
Yep. The largest drug companies is Purdue Pharma entities. So that's Purdue Pharmaceuticals, Purdue Frederick Company, Teva, T-E-V-A Pharmaceuticals USA, Cephalon, C-E-P-H-A-L-O-N, Johnson & Johnson, Janssen Pharmaceuticals, Endo Pharmaceutical entities, a company called Endo, and then there are several individual defendants, some of the individual physicians that publish some of the literature and some of the research that is alleged to be misleading. The individuals are named as well.
And then are the 5 boroughs of the major metropolitan areas in the city, are they involved in the litigation?
I don't think that they are involved yet, and they may be handling it, separately. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. My concentration really has been really to look out for the upstate counties. I'm really not involved with the downstate counties. And just to clarify that, my role, should you decide to go with Simmons Hanley Conroy, would be to really have a second law firm who's from your region to work with them up here, so that, and that's not the case in every county. They've got counties elsewhere where they're not working with a local law firm. So it's not costing any more. I think you're just getting an additional advocate for your position at the bargaining table. I'm sure that's the same thing Bill's probably considering. Well, I don't know. I don't know if he's working with them on any other counties. We are. We've made presentations to a number of counties: Ulster, Schoharie, Fulton. We're scheduled to be in Montgomery and Saratoga. We expect to be speaking in front of shortly as well. But let me just say this, regardless of what law firm you decide to use, you know, I've been practicing for 35 years, and almost all of my work has been contingency fee work. And sometimes, you know, we tell people when it doesn't make sense to bring a claim, either because we can't really achieve anything for you that's meaningful. I think there is something that can be achieved here that's meaningful. One, it's important message that needs to be sent, and two, you know, it's not fair that burden be shifted on to the taxpayers and your citizens. And really, three, there's really not a downside, a financial downside to the county, I think, to at least keep its options open and consider participating in this.
Supervisor Brock.
Yes, thank you. I'm from the city of Glens Falls. We have our own police department. What you talked about, the recovery of costs, with things like our people doing investigations, arrests, would that be part of the cost, or is that too far out?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. Obviously, the city is a separate financial entity than the county. So, in essence, there's probably some you know, overlapping benefit that the city would obtain if the county was successful in obtaining compensation. But I don't know the answer to your question specifically, whether or not there would be direct kind of a attribution towards, you know, the city's law enforcement costs or other direct costs. Certainly there are some cities that have brought their own cases, I believe, and that's always an option.
Would you have a definition of what the costs that you're looking for, so that we know what we're...
Well,
I mean, you don't have to have it right at the moment.
Just to give you some ideas, some of the costs are, you know, the costs for the opioids themselves. So if you've got some folks that are, you know, getting Medicare or Medicaid, right? You're paying a piece of, certainly a piece of Medicaid. The cost of the opioids themselves, the cost of addiction treatment, some of the other social costs associated with addiction, programming and training costs, healthcare costs, criminal justice costs, victimization costs, lost productivity. I mean, productivity, you know, it's you know, if you're any kind of employer in construction trades or other trades, sometimes they're having problems finding people in the workforce that can pass a drug test. It's a real issue today.
Yes, Travis.
Besides competing law firms, don't you have like attorneys generals in Massachusetts, even New York, other, and if it's such a pervasive problem, and I believe everybody knows here that it is, don't you expect that at some point in time there'll be a national type settlement similar to the tobacco settlement, and in that case, you know, we got our share. We were not involved in any litigation ourselves, but we were able to share and everything. So if it goes to that extent, perhaps just waiting would be the thing to do.
Sure. There were private law firms, of course, and, you know, many private law firms throughout the country that really pushed the tobacco litigation. In all due respect to the various attorney generals, I can tell you that you know, the pace of litigation is not going to be the same if the private sector is pushing it versus the attorney generals. There's different constraints and limitations that they have. So I think that this is going to be, at the end of the day, I think this is going to be a combined effort. If there's going to be a resolution, and there might not be, but if there is going to be a resolution, there's going to be a combined effort on behalf of attorneys generals, you know, county attorneys, city, corporation counsel, all working with the private bar that are pursuing these cases. I don't think, though, that it's likely that it will happen with just any one of them.
Right. probably be more like
Joint.
tobacco, right?
Right.
In which case we were able to participate once that was all settled.
Right, but you were at the end of the day, again, I can't speak specifically to how it worked for each and every entity. That was brought from the top down. The Attorney General of New York hasn't brought this litigation yet. Tobacco is all the Attorney Generals in the country got together. That has not happened with the opioid litigation yet. And it may, but it certainly may not.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Boyajian, out of all your presentations made, have any counties supported this by resolution?
Fulton County has. I spoke to them last week, and they did a resolution right after the meeting supporting it, to my understanding. Ulster County as well. And as I said, Simmons, Hanley, Conroy just, I believe that St. Lawrence County just signed an agreement with them, I believe within last week, and they've got, I think, 15 or 16 counties, not including the ones that I'm speaking to. So they, without question, I think have the bulk of the counties. I think they're going to have the bulk of the bargaining power when they get in front of the pharmaceutical companies. But those are the only law firms that I know of that are doing. There are some firms that are involved in this at the national level. There's a law firm called Motley Rice but they're taking a different tactic, and they may be taking more of a tactic that you are referring to. But they haven't filed any litigation. The only law firms that have filed litigation is Simmons, Hanley, Conroy, which filed these cases, and then subsequently the Napoli Burns firm. That's the only litigation pending in New York State, and that's what's going to push this issue, in my view.
So what would the committee's pleasure be at this point? Anyone care to make a resolution, or do you want some more time?
I mean, what would the resolution be?
Well, probably to move forward with the firm. I'm sorry, what is it, Simmons?
Simmons, Hanley, Conroy, and we would be co-counsel with them.
Yeah, as another county that would join forces with other counties in this litigation.
I'd like to at least hear Bill Nickus's presentation. I mean,
Okay.
I'd rather wait and
Rather wait?
also hear Mr. Nickus's presentation too.
When do we know Mr. Nickus will be here to present this?
he's had a willingness, and I shared it with Kevin and I shared it with Ron. I guess it's up to them to negotiate that with Mr. Nickus as to when you want to have a meeting, when he'll be here and so forth. I don't think it's up to me, just because he initiated the email sort of thing.
Supervisor Sieber?
NISAC is tomorrow. I'm going to be out there on Wednesday and Thursday morning. I'd like an opportunity to speak with members of the Public Safety Committee that I sit on, and I'm sure there'll be discussion at NISAC regarding this. But I'd like to learn a little bit more about it. I also think it would have been helpful to have both presentations here today. I know you didn't know about it, but I think to make a good informed decision, I know I'm not prepared today to make that decision.
Okay.
Listen, I think that, obviously, I think you should hear from everybody who's, and see what they bring to the table. I will tell you, and I didn't mention this, but, our law firm, as I said, we've done a lot of class actions. We've also have, as a local basis, without a national law firm behind us. Our law firm has taken on some of the biggest companies in the country in very complicated, brutal litigation for the last 30 years. My law firm, without any help from any other law firms, we just finished the litigation on behalf of Saratoga County and the Saratoga County Water Authority against General Electric Company for the increased costs to the Saratoga County Water Authority, the county, and various towns along the Hudson who have to stop drawing their water from, below Monroe. That was against GE, and I can tell you that, we were able to do that, and that was a case like this that was kind of scoffed at initially. So we've got the resources, the experience, and I think the ability, if there is a case there that can be made, and we think there is, to do that. So I really appreciate having the opportunity speak before you all, and if anyone has any subsequent questions, please feel free. Ryan will try to answer them. Thanks a lot.
No, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to skip 2, if you don't mind. Ms. Duffy is here, so we'd like to pass these over. For items 3 on the agenda, the items are in your packet, A and B. The first one is a request to approve collective bargaining agreements between SUNY Adirondack and SUNY Adirondack Education Support Personnel for the term of September 1st, 2017 to August 31st of 2020. And there is a resolution on the back. Motion made by Supervisor McDevitt, seconded by Supervisor Simpson. Any discussion on this?
Just
Supervisor Strauss?
on the SUNY Adirondack ones, Mr. Chairman, since I'm on the Board of Trustees, I will recuse from voting.
Understood? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item B is request to approve SUNY Adirondack 2018-2019 capital request, I'm sorry. And that is on the back page as well. Motion made by Supervisor McDevitt, seconded by Supervisor Simpson. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, and C is request to sponsor SUNY Adirondack Culinary Expansion Project in the amount of $1 million.
Who's that?
That one was discussed last finance, I believe. Yeah.
Last meeting?
Are you making
To be fair,
motion?
well, for discussion, sure.
Okay. Motion made by Supervisor Sieber, second by Supervisor McDevitt. Go ahead, Ms. Sieber.
Thank you. At our Personnel and Higher Education Committee meeting, we did have a discussion about this, and I believe it was approved through our Personnel Committee if and only if the County Attorney's Office had done its check. I think Kevin called it a smell test, maybe, I think. And also the Treasurer's Office. And so, would it be okay to have Mary kind of just do an update on what she found out?
I think that would be appropriate that
Okay.
she explain it.
Okay, thank you.
So we did some research into this, and basically it wouldn't be a loan, you would have to sponsor the project. So today you would pass a resolution to sponsor the culinary project in an amount of $1 million. We did this back in 2007, I can't remember the exact project for it. But then in 2008, when the state grant came through, the county just passed another resolution accepting the state grant to be reimbursed for the money that they put forward for the capital project. So it's technically called the sponsoring of the capital project.
But this was also, I mean, according to our county treasurer, wasn't this, we were going to make these in payments,
No.
certain payments?
Well,
And then if we weren't going to be reimbursed, we were going to discontinue those payments?
No.
No.
Basically, what the resolution now is to establish this as a sponsorship type thing, and to also establish a source of revenue so that we can pay for it. And the source of revenue, I'm not sure, I haven't seen the actual thing, but I think it's out of our surplus. And then at the end of this, we would get the grant money back based on another resolution to accept that back. What we will be doing is the same way we've done the NSTEM project, which is as the invoices come in, we don't pay them. So we won't be upfronting $1 million right off the bat. It will be over the course of the completion of the project. And it's also my understanding that this must be completed before reimbursement can be submitted. So the project would be completed, everything would be paid for, and then the final grant application would be made. I think that's correct.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. And then when the grant comes back, we would pass a resolution to accept that money. To go one step further, we did request from SUNY Adirondack that they send us all the contract information, grant information, everything else. We have received that, and Rob has reviewed it, and I think we'll okay with that.
Okay.
So basically, we're loaning $1 million to SUNY Adirondack, and then, once the project is completed, we will be reimbursed via the grant from the New York State. Is that,
That's the way I understood it.
That's not proper. No,
That's the way I
we're running the
understand
project. We're putting the money up. We're putting $1 million up for the project with the hopes that the state will come through with the grant money and we will get reimbursed that money. We can't loan the college.
legally you can't, okay.
Not loan the college any money.
We have
Okay.
to create a capital project. And
It's like any other capital
like-
project.
Like any other capital project, this has to be set up. And then at the end of it, when the project is all done and the grant money is becoming available, then the county would have to pass another resolution to accept that grant money
Right.
to pay back the capital project.
So that grant money would be made to SUNY Adirondack,
Yes.
correct? Okay, and then we have to, okay.
It's their
We
grant.
get stuck.
It's their grant. Okay.
That's my point. So where are we getting the money if they don't?
No, wait, I gotta ask Frank.
Dennis asked if they don't.
If they don't what?
They don't get the grant money.
And,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
We have the signed grant and the contract and everything, so, I mean, I guess you have to kind of trust the state of New York like we do for practically everything else that comes in.
I checked with the budget officer. He's okay with it. That's why I get my yes vote.
Well, in the following year, if we don't get the money, then there's your other commitment. Okay, so does the committee understand what we're up against here? Okay, Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you. Dr. Duffy, I know in the past of the NSTEM project that if the formula does change to the capital chargeback, that will count towards our contribution. Would this also qualify even if we are reimbursed by grant?
No, because you're not actually contributing.
Even though we're,
I mean, if you were
Paid
paid back,
back.
then
yeah.
you're not contributing.
I don't know.
I think, I mean, I can't tell you for sure, Supervisor Seaver, because that hasn't happened, but
Friends in Washington.
if you think about it, you wouldn't actually, the county is not actually funding the project.
Right, I understand that. I just didn't know if there was an opportunity there to have that count towards that chargeback specifically because the grant, if it doesn't come through, we're on the hook. And, you know, there is a small cost of administration from our office, from interest, from things like that we are going to be giving without grant reimbursement. I mean, it's not free to us. Of course, we want to be good sponsors, and we recognize the contribution and how helpful this is. And certainly in the city of Glens Falls, it's going to make a big difference and increase enrollment at the college and has all wonderful things. I'm just trying to make sure that we capture the benefit to our county.
And all I could say is it wouldn't be my decision, so I don't know for sure. So if
Okay.
that happened, we would certainly pursue it as best we could.
Okay.
It wouldn't be a decision the college would make anyway, that's the
Right.
state's decision.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Duffy, I have a question. Is this $1 million just from Warren County? Does Washington County also have to?
So the cost of the estimated cost for the project itself, which is about fitting up and equipping the new space, is actually $1.3 million. We requested $1 million of funding through Empire State Development, which is the grant that we're talking about.
Okay.
And $600,000 we privately raised, and that's it at this point. We came to Warren County to help sponsor the project that you've been talking about, so that we could pay our vendors as we go through the process with the anticipation of being reimbursed.
Right, so this is solely coming from Warren County then?
For sponsorship. yes.
Right. Supervisor Merlino, I'm sorry.
That was the question I was going to ask,
Okay.
but
Great minds think alike.
I hate to be the bad guy, but you know, when are we going to stop? When are we going to slow down a little bit? Every year in the last 3 years, I mean, I love the college, but boy, you know, it's put a lot on our taxpayers in Warren County. We have a lot of seniors here. Even I can't afford the taxes anymore. So, I don't know.
Well, this is
being
a,
pushed through quickly. I'm
this is a sponsorship though.
I
mean, we are,
know what it is, but if we don't get replaced 2 years from now, it'll become out of our budget. Surplus. That's all my comment.
Supervisor Stroud, did you have a, I thought you had your hand.
No.
Okay.
Can't talk.
That's true. I guess Supervisor Thomas or budget officer. Would this come out of the surplus, or do you have other ideas? Yeah.
We do this all the time, I mean, you know, it's a grant, you know, it's saying, road money, you know, much silly money, we spend it up front. Always get it back, we, you know, we use all the time.
Okay. Supervisor Seaver?
I think one of the benefits here is, you know, we've been listening to the treasurer's office and the many supervisors say we've entered into contracts before where we didn't have a contract, we didn't have a signed contract, and, you know, they've certainly provided that documentation. You know, I think you've got the blessing of the budget officer, the blessing of your treasurer. I think all of us have reservations in terms of will the state actually come through. I think at this point, too, it might be beneficial to have us send a letter to our state reps and to the Empire grant and let them know that we're really counting on this time frame to be exactly what they say it's going to be, and not fall into a situation like we have in other state grants where it's taken years. I think, you know, that's obviously a risk of it.
So is this in your form of motion?
I think it's on the table.
I think we already have.
We do have a first and a second?
Yeah,
Mhm.
you made me do it for discussion.
Yeah,
Supervisor- Oh, my bad.
It's okay.
Okay. So if there are no other questions or comments, I guess I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. Very welcome. Okay, now we move on to our county treasurer for his budget presentation. For those of you who do not know, Mike is going to be out in surgery, so his time frame would have been exhausted.
Yeah, I want to thank you for allowing me to do this a little early. I'm having knee replacement done a week from Monday, so I'll be out during the next cycle of committee meetings. Rob is passing out the budget right now. I'll give you a couple of quick highlights. First of all, our expenses have gone up a little over $11,000. $7,400 of that is attributable to our actuary audit that we do every other year. This is as part of the retirement system that we have to do. So one year it's up $7,400, the next year it's down $7,400. This is for 18 will be the year that that's included. All right, so that's the bulk of our expenses. The projected revenues that we have, if you go to the fourth page of what you see, you'll see our revenue projections. Basically, we're up, and it's misleading, and Supervisor Molino will probably tell me this, that we're talking about quite a substantial increase in sales tax. However, only half of what we're showing is actually to the county. Supervisor Molino, I want to make sure I got that in there for you, sir.
Thank you.
But what we've done is Rob and I have looked at the last few years. We've been saying that we should hold that sales tax at no increase. I think we've finally seen enough information and going forward, and that we're projecting an increase. However, I just want to say that this actual figure is a figure that the budget officer and the county board has to approve. Okay, we're just normally in the past we said don't increase it. Now we're saying I think it's time that we can. I agree with the budget officer that I think we can make a substantial increase in this, and it will be, just from the past that we've seen, I think we'll be okay with that. There's a couple other line items that may look kind of funky, like the gain from the sales tax, or from the auction. We haven't had the auction yet this year, so that amount of money has not come in, obviously. The auction won't be until October. Sales tax I talked about is up. Our occupancy tax administration will go up because that's 3% based on whatever is collected. Okay, so that's going to be up. We've projected that. Gifts and donations, which is at $2,705. Every other year from the Tobacco Corporation, we've been giving the counties about $60,000 as a gift, basically. What we decided is talking about it, that rather than doing $60,000 every other year, we would do $30,000 every year. That way it's a more consistent number going forward. and it's something that the Tobacco Corporation can afford to do. So that just gives it a little more consistency and doesn't have that $60,000 up and down every other year. Let me see, OTB earnings, they're holding their own. They were falling off for quite a while. The tribal monies, which is the gambling money, casino money, we're projecting 425. That's about where we were at last year. So that's pretty much holding the same. Any questions as I'm going along here? Just, yes, sir.
I was looking at the Siemens settlement. There's no page number on this, but it's showing zeros.
That was a one-shot deal?
That was a one-shot deal that we did.
Okay, so the 500,000 is...
That's a one-shot deal for 2017.
Okay.
We had to create the line item for it to accept the money.
Okay.
Going forward, obviously, well, I shouldn't say there isn't one, but as far as I know, we have no planned litigation against Siemens, so there won't be any more money going into that account.
Okay.
What was I? Okay. The tobacco settlement money, while we're talking about that, which is right above the Siemens settlement, we're showing that falling off a little bit. That money has, over the course of the last several years, dropped and dropped and dropped a little bit every year, so we're just trying to project that out to be realistic with that figure. You will notice, if you're looking on that, in 2016 we had an actual of $774,000. That's because there was a one-time settlement, because there was a contesting on past payments, and it was put into escrow, and we received that money in 2016, which was an extra 300 and, Rob, was it 300 and some thousand? $370,000 above and beyond the normal contribution. So that's why that figure is so high. In 2017 we collected $339,000, so I think we'll be safe with that figure. Down at the bottom of the page, you can see our normal contractual supplies and so forth. All those figures are basically all the same from year to year. And the contractual is up $7,400 because of the actuarial audit. Questions?
Any questions from the committee? We met preliminarily last week and went over Mike's budget. It looks pretty responsible, and there's not a lot to it, so... I'm sorry. Yes, Travis?
Quick question, is that $339,000 tobacco, is that net of your expenses on the bond, or is that...
That's a check that we received
And then you have
from
to
the
pay-
settlement corporation.
And then you have to then pay off the bond?
No, that's our money.
So your net?
Our net. Because before we get that, the money is taken out to pay those bonds.
The other half.
Yeah, the other half, right. On the other thing, I think Chairman Sokol raised during our meeting was the medical marijuana. We get a percentage of that. Have no idea where that's going to be. We just came up with a figure.
Yeah.
So.
Supervisor Sieb?
Just a quick question under the 410 for supplies. You've got an actual amount of $9,000 from 2016 adopted and amended at $12,000, but to date you only have $37.85 and you're asking for $12,000.
Correct.
Just what hasn't been spent out yet that's going to make up that difference?
Just, we normally go between $9,000 and $12,000 a year, depending on what we spend for supplies, and that's just, we're projecting that out. I don't. Rob, do you know what the 2017 actual, when that was as of? The end of August. So we just haven't spent all of it.
I mean, I guess the same thing applies to the telephone line. You've spent $1,000, but you've got 47 in the amended budget asking for 50. What, $49,000 is going to be spent between August and now?
Wait a minute, what are you talking
That's
about?
repair and maintenance.
Oh, repair and maintenance. I'm sorry,
Repair
not
and
telephone,
maintenance.
repair and maintenance, 422.
That's what we pay for the software package for New World.
Oh, so New World's coming out of your budget?
Yes.
I thought it was coming out of personnel's budget.
No.
No, it's staying.
That's Novatime. that comes
Novatime,
out
okay.
of their budget. New World comes out of ours. So that's We have, I mean, that's just what we have to pay. That's
Okay.
a contractual.
And that's
December, okay, then.
December? Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Brock?
Now that we're looking at it, we only pay $300 for telecom.
Sorry about that.
That's for, almost
Yeah.
better than my stuff.
We don't make long distance calls. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't get either.
Anything else? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Chairman.
Thank you. I agree with your assessment on sales tax. That's always a difficult thing to know what to do. Because on one hand, you can look back and you know historically what we've done. On the other hand, you're always worried about sales tax because what happened, for example, in 2008 and 2009, where it went off a cliff and then you're caught way out uphill. So it's always a difficult thing to know how much of that you should carry forward and increase because you're always worried about it. You're always worried about the other. And
Well, we came up short 2 years in a row, so that makes, I know that Frank and I am very nervous about that happening again.
so I think that what I'm saying is I think your caution in how much to reach is well placed.
Thank you.
Just a comment on your salary schedule. This is the 2018 salary schedule, I guess proposal. Where's the 2017? So we know what we're comparing it to. I see the total numbers, I just don't see the breakdown.
Which ones are you talking about now?
That's all of them. I don't really know what I'm comparing them to.
Well, the outside, I mean, most of the people in my office are CSEA employees, so it's part of the contract. So that's what they are, whatever they are.
This page.
That's just what we were given. Let me see here.
What's the question?
There's a
I guess-
2018 salary schedule.
Right.
Where's the 2017 that's been, whether it's been amended or it stayed the same since the beginning, to do a comparison?
Well, if you look at the point ones on your summary page,
Right, but that's just a total.
right.
Where's
But most of
maybe it's the
the
same.
salaries on this 2018 are dictated by the CSEA contracts. The out of unit salaries have not been changed yet.
They haven't.
That's a budget officer change. So those
Four out of units.
out of unit salaries are based on what they are in 2017, correct?
Correct.
So they have not been adjusted yet.
So we won't see that till the proposal of the budget.
You won't see it till Frank presents his budget.
That's my salary, Rob's salary, and 2 other employees in my office.
But the rest of them reflect the CSEA contract.
And that's the same for all departments? Not to get on
The
track.
same everywhere. Anybody who's out of unit, those salaries haven't been determined yet. We have to do the
Okay.
evaluation process,
Okay.
and then
Okay.
the budget officer has a little discretion.
And then that's, I think last year you gave like a whole chart with the differences.
Yep.
So you'll do that again this
Every
year
year.
after eval. Okay.
Anything else for our county treasurer? Michael, good luck with your surgery, my friend.
Thank you.
All good?
All right, thank you.
Okay, we have one more item, and that is to go into executive session. Brian?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we had a notice of claim that could ripen into a lawsuit. We received a settlement offer yesterday, and I wanted to brief the committee on that potential litigation and get the sense of the committee whether you want to accept that settlement offer or not.
Motion made by Supervisor Simpson, seconded by Supervisor Garrity. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We are going to need a motion to to settle on the Pagano case for $5,000, and the source of funding will be out of the DPW department. Motion made by Supervisor Garrity, second by Supervisor Dickinson. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Anything else to come before Finance? If not, I need a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Dickinson, Supervisor Frazier, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much.
Go.